Hello guys, Yami Yusaku here, and today we're going to be talking some Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Episode 2. Now, one thing I really like about this episode is the way they open it up with a flashback to 2 years ago and a duel between Yusei and Jack. Now, starting with Episode 1 of the show, we get all this foreshadowing towards this major throwdown that Yusei is trying to head towards in order to get back what Jack took from him, which is supposedly his ace card, or his ace monster. So with all that being understood, having this flashback to when they dueled before is really neat. It just ties more into that whole story of these two being rivals. And with all of that being the case, it's also really cool, at least in my opinion, to see Yusei lose to Jack. I always like seeing the main protagonists of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show lose fairly early on because I believe it humanizes them. And a lot of times if they are going to lose within the show, it's going to be on the earlier side of things. But anyway, so yeah, Yusei loses. He goes in for an attack with Junk Warrior. It's implied that probably would have won him the duel. Jack uses a trap card, Shadow Spell, locks down Junk Warrior. Jack wins on the next turn, and then Jack gives him a lecture about how you can't win duels with just monster cards. So it's cool how Jack, while being this rival that's painted to be super egotistical and mean, is still giving Yusei kind of some advice on how to be a better duelist. And later in the episode, after Yusei wins the duel that takes place here between him and the guy with the insect deck, Yusei still refers to Jack as a friend. And Jack still seems haunted by his time in Satellite, and I'm wondering if that ties to Yusei, so there's definitely a strong bond, or at least there was between these two, that kept them so connected, at least in their earlier days, the way everything is implied to be. So all of that seems to be building up to this continuing thing that these two seem to be connected by fate somehow, and that adding to that idea is towards the end of the episode when Jack's talking to this other guy who's sort of built up to be kind of like his butler at this point, or something like that, considering he's asking if he can do anything for Jack, and he's talking about him in a positive manner, and how he was destined to come to the city. But regardless, Jack is talking about how it was on that night 2 years ago that he came to the city, and Yusei, after he wins the duel in this episode, which I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, is basically on course to leave for the city on that night as well. So their destinies seem to be linked in some way, which is definitely by no means against what Yu-Gi-Oh! Normally does. That's a very common trend in the show. So I think it's well written here. They keep hinting at it, and they aren't outright saying it. I like that classic show don't tell method of storytelling. And while we're on the subject of Jack for a minute, let's just talk about how awesome it was that he was able to throw Stardust Dragon and have it land right in the middle of the deck perfectly like that. I mean, at least for me, throwing cards accurately enough on its own is difficult, but getting it to land in the middle of a stack of cards, that was just really cool. And then Jack's just got a pretty incredible life going for him at the moment in terms of what he has, at least, his living accommodations. He's got his own D-wheel track right there where he lives, and it's his personal track. He can do whatever he wants with it for the most part. So with all that, it's kind of understandable why Yusei's friends seem to think they're hitting on it like a sore spot whenever they bring up Jack around Yusei. And it's understandable why they would assume that Yusei wants to take stuff from Jack, but Yusei keeps insisting, no, I'm just taking back what's mine and then leaving, which we can assume is the card. So more props to Yusei on that, maintaining a sense of humility. He still refers to Jack as a friend, despite the fact that Jack's now living the high life while Yusei's still down in Satellite being looked down upon by everybody and struggling to get by and everything else. It's a really interesting relationship between these two. I really like the way they're setting it up. So now that I'm finished talking about the first 3 or 4 minutes of the episode, let's go ahead and move on to what happens in the majority of the rest of it. Now, pretty much what we get opened up with once we get into the primary plot of what goes on here is Yusei's friends working at some kind of a recycling plant. At least that's what I'm getting the vibe of, based on the fact that they seem to be sorting through things, and then they've got these boxes they're moving, and the guy who's with Jack, who's sort of like his butler, at least the way he's portrayed right now, refers to how Satellite recycles city's garbage. They seem to be at some sort of a plant like that. But regardless, we are once more shown this really run-down, beat-up environment, which just reinforces how desperate of a situation the people of Satellite are in. And this serves to reinforce the fact of how impressive it was that Yusei managed to make a fully functional D-wheel out of essentially scrap parts and the one part Rally stole from him. But anyway, back to our rundown factory area. Basically, we've got this guy who was sent down from City to Satellite, featuring some kind of a mark on his face that the Yusei's friends identify when they walk by him as being the cause. I think it identifies him as a criminal, and that's why he was sent there. But he ends up tripping one of Yusei's friends as they're carrying boxes out of the factory type of area. They get into a bit of a qualm, and then the guards there who are overseeing the work end up breaking them up, and we find out later that the jerk gets in trouble. So with all that, basically what ends up happening is Jerk Guy from City, who got bumped down to Satellite, goes with his crew to pick a fight with Yusei's friends over the fact that he picked a fight before and got in trouble when he was the one who started it. But anyway, yeah, they end up dueling, and the guy says, you know, if I win, you're going to give me your D-wheel, Yusei. Yusei wins to no surprise, but what I like about the result is there seems to be the sense of camaraderie and mutual respect between duelists, because afterwards the guy seems fine. He's a lot more pleasant to Yusei and his friends, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure we'll duel again, next time I'll be sure to win, drops the whole thing about taking Yusei's D-wheel if he wins entirely, and just moves on. We see something fairly similar with Ushio with the Duel Chasers. He respects the fact that Yusei won when they dueled, and he pays for the part that Rally stole, and nobody got in trouble. He wants to go after Yusei again, but he even says to his boss, you know, it's the code of a duelist, I stand by my word if I lose the duel, and go with that. So I'm liking the mutual respect type of thing that they're setting up here. It's well done. So basically where we're left at the end of this episode is a heavy implication that next episode Yusei is going to be trying to escape Satellite and go catch up with Jack, given the fact that, like I said earlier, Jack references that it was 2 years ago on this night that he left City, and the fact that Yusei had mentioned his D-wheel was ready in the simulations he'd been doing with Rally earlier in the episode. So everything seems to be set up, and it's going to be really exciting to see these two meet up, assuming that they do and Yusei manages to succeed in escaping, but seeing how he's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, I'm sure he will. If not, they're setting up for some kind of a major setback, at which rate he can grow from it. But either way, it's going to be an exciting turn of events. This was sort of a filler episode, but there was enough story stuff in there that I'm kind of okay with it. It's not my favorite episode of 5D's by any means, and I definitely prefer episode 1 over this, but it wasn't too bad. So that about wraps it up for my thoughts on this episode, guys. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Are you enjoying where this is going? Are you excited for the next episode? Do you think Yusei's going to succeed in escaping? Or if you're watching 5D's again like I am, is it as good as you remember it so far? Or is it a lot worse? And those types of things. Be sure to let me know either way. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you didn't, constructive criticism is always welcome, and as always, have a nice day.